Thank you all for having me here today. I'm really glad to join the event. So I attended a few back when they were in person, and again, like everyone, looking forward to being able to see everyone in person in the future. But in the meantime, I'm happy that we have the virtual option. Again, my name is Alex Heeren. My co-presenter is Ryan Leahy. We're both from the Wildlife Health Laboratory with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Also from CDFW is Colleen Young, who will have a different presentation later on in the event. So just wanted to thank her for connecting us and help and the core planning team for again inviting us here. One or two sort of disclaimers before I jump in it, based around the image. So I have this adorable picture of a seal, but my presentation is going to be a lot focused a lot on terrestrial wildlife as well as marine wildlife. So again, I know the focus today is marine. Our program is focused on human-wildlife conflict in general throughout California. So not just marine species, but other species as well. The other disclaimer is, the reason why the seal is smiling is because I was using the zoom lens, so I just wanted to assure everyone that this was I was a respectful distance from the seal. So yes, again, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, our mission statement is to manage California's diverse fish, wildlife, plant resources, and habitats upon which they depend for their ecological values and for their use and enjoyment of the public. So again, our mission is all wildlife in California, terrestrial as well as marine species. The department is the public trust agency for managing wildlife. However, we also work with in the state of California, but we also work with a lot of other partners, different federal agencies, nonprofits, non-government organizations, and other local governance on these issues, particularly for marine species. A lot of the specifically marine mammals are also oftentimes overseen by both the federal government and the state governance. So one of the things that we're charged with as part of our mission is helping people coexist with wildlife. So in California, we have it's one of the most diverse states in terms of both our human population and our wildlife populations. Sometimes this often leads to conflict. This can be humans disturbing wildlife, and that can be the source of conflict. It can also be when wildlife come up maybe onto human homes or human residences, and it's unexpected, and problems and conflicts occur from there. We know in California that human-wildlife conflict and encounters are on the rise. We have a wildlife incident reporting system. This is an online system that people can report either sightings of wildlife, encounters with wildlife, as well as if they have concerns or maybe they had an interaction with a wild animal that resulted in property damage or other concern. They can report that to our department online using the system. The system then routes the report to an individual in our department, a local biologist or fish and game or wildlife officer, to help respond to that concern. But it also tracks and records information so that we can use it for analysis in the future. So this is just a brief overview of the reports that we get through our online system. As you can see, that it's essentially occurs wherever humans and wildlife overlap, with the exception of there are some reporting gaps in the Central Valley and Northern California, where it seems that maybe we know that people are interacting and encountering wildlife in these areas, but obviously it's probably because the gaps are because people are unaware of our reporting system, or they're not reporting their encounters through the system to us. Again, this is the historical data from the 2017, which is when our online system went online, through this year. And again, the reports that we're getting are not necessarily reflective of all human-wildlife conflict in the state. For example, you can see that there are no marine species on this map. That's not to say that humans and marine species aren't interacting. It just means that people are not using the reporting system to report those interactions. So the most common reports that we get are black bear and mountain lion, followed by wild pig, and beaver for particularly in central and northern California, coyotes, bobcat, and wild turkey, which is also often a surprise. It's more in northern California that people encounter wild turkeys. So again, I always like to emphasize that it's a good baseline for us to work with, but it's only showing information on what is reported to our department, not what is actually encountering in the real world. So it's it's a measure of human reporting behavior, not necessarily ecology or wildlife behavior. So in order to help to respond to some of these issues and to expand it so we have more robust and comprehensive program, this state recently has provided funding for a new human-wildlife conflict program with our California Department of Fish and Wildlife. This provides budget for equipment, so non-lethal deterrence equipment, equipment that we can help landowners and property owners put on their properties to scare wildlife away, to prevent issues from property damage. Telemetric equipment to evaluate responses. So this is an image of one of the just a partial image of some of the radio collars we just recently got in last week. The goal is that we'll put these collars on animals so that we can track their movements and better research, analyze how humans and wildlife interact, and how does human presence influence wildlife behavior, and how we can incorporate that into our conservation and management. And then a big section on outreach and education. It also provides staffing to our wildlife branch, primarily in our wildlife health laboratory, to coordinate and assist in research. Just because California is such a diverse state, it really a lot of research and analysis needs to go into look at where are conflicts occurring, who is experiencing conflicts, who is not reporting conflicts, and how we can better address the needs of different communities, and also regional staff to help respond to incidents. So this is just an image of the folks who have recently, some of the folks have been on with CDFW for a while working on human-wildlife conflict, others are new. So again, we have a fairly large team that started this year and underwent a training, human-wildlife conflict training academy that we offered to help them be trained to respond to incidents in the field and help the public coexist with wildlife. So just as an example, I know this is probably going to be a little bit different than a lot of the other talks, but just because it's the sort of the species that we have the most experience with currently for looking at the data analysis, because we have the largest sample size of reports. I'm going to look at a brief case study of black bears in California. So this is a graph of the number of people who reported property damage resulting from black bears and the type of property damage that they experienced. What we can use this for is to see what is being reported to our department. How does that compare and contrast with our own personal experiences and professional experiences? For example, we know that bears getting into people leaving food in vehicles and attracting bears is actually much more common than this graph would indicate. So this, to me, this same with campgrounds. So that probably means that there's a gap in our reporting, that we can work with other partners to try to get those reports or try to get that data to help address those concerns. But it also shows us what we can also help focus on, that in California, for black bears, the most commonly reported damages that we receive are damages to livestock or pets. So bears eating domestic animals, as well as damages to buildings or structures. So bears breaking into garages or houses. So how can we help people prevent these sorts of damages? looking at again, using bears as a case study, looking at the type of incidents. Oftentimes when people think of livestock being lost to wild animals, they're thinking of cattle and other large predators taking their cattle or their larger livestock. What it actually is for bears, it's essentially bears getting to chicken coops. So that's a very different problem to address than free range cattle for black bears. So our outreach and communication really needs to focus on how to prevent bears from getting into chicken coops. So we again, using black bears as a case study, we're using this information and working with our new cohort of human-wildlife conflict specialists to provide guidance to coexisting with different wildlife species. So we have on our CFW homepage, we have this blue box for helping individuals live with wildlife to provide guidance. Within there, we have a section on black bears, but we also have a human-wildlife conflict toolkit that focuses on a variety of different species, including marine species. So again, if you have additional resources for that, feel free to outreach us. We're always on the lookout for different tools and resources that we include in our toolkit. And then we're also partnering with other groups. For example, there's a large nationwide education program focused on our black bear coexistence called Bearwise that we've recently partnered with to help sort of be all on the same page, providing the same outreach and communication so that we essentially don't need to reinvent the wheel to develop our own materials when there's already other groups doing great work in this field. So moving on to sort of our next steps and future directions. So our goal is to expand our efforts to be more inclusive of different communities, both communities in the social sense, but also in the ecological sense of having wildlife being part of one's community. We want, California again is really diverse in terms of both its people and wildlife. We know that because unfortunately our reporting tools and a lot of our outreach are available currently only in English. That is definitely a barrier and a limit that we're trying to overcome to be more inclusive. We also know that, as I just showed with the chart, that we're only focusing on a small portion of the species that people interact with. So again, trying to be more inclusive to the different types of species and interactions that people have with wildlife. We currently have a program with the University of San Francisco going through Twitter. Right now, a lot of the reports that we get through our department are people having problems with wildlife because that's why they're contacting us. We know that doesn't necessarily portray a wildlife in a fair, unbiased perspective, because a lot of people have positive interactions with wildlife and they just don't report positive interactions. So again, trying to be more inclusive of the different types of interactions and the different people who are able to interact and encounter wildlife, and also engaging communities to raise awareness and appreciation of wildlife, both providing education about species and wildlife, as well as building tolerance and explain why wildlife are important to California and the planet. Proactively preventing conflicts. So a lot of our responses have just because of lack of staffing and resources have been reactive, that after a problem has occurred, we work with the property owners to try to prevent future problems. What we would like to do is prevent the problem from occurring in the first place. So a lot of this focuses on conflict transformation, which is looking at the social conflict between different user groups, whether it's different types of recreation stakeholder groups, different types of other communities that may have a vested interest in wildlife, but maybe perceiving it from different angles, and how to prevent the social conflict from between those groups, which is really oftentimes the source of human-wildlife conflict. Oftentimes, human-wildlife conflict is not about wildlife, humans and wildlife coming in conflict. It's different groups of people coming in conflict over wildlife. And finally, just promoting coexistence behaviors. Again, both for to prevent human disturbances on wildlife populations, as well as preventing human people encountering problems with wildlife and that lowering their tolerance. So again, trying to build a more peaceful and respectful coexistence between humans and our wildlife populations. So with that, I apologize, I lose all track of time during presentation. So I'm not sure if there's time for questions or not, but I just wanted to thank everyone. And if there are questions that we can't get to, feel free to send me an email through the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. And Kara's monitoring the chat here. Do we have any questions? Let's see. Can you say a bit more about the program with University of San Francisco?
Yeah. So so University of San Francisco has it's a data science management master's, and it's a pretty advanced. They sort of combine a 2-year master program into about just over a year. So we're working with a few students from them to go through and mine some of the data from Twitter to look at what people are posting on social media about wildlife, to see our what we did last year. We had worked with a team of students, and they looked at the postings for coyotes, and what we get is we get a lot of people who are upset that they see a coyote. Maybe it's a new experience for them, so they're fearful, or they're concerned, or maybe they unfortunately maybe have lost a pet, and that is obviously a very negative experience for them. What we find in Twitter is that people are posting a lot of positive interactions, that they saw a coyote and they thought it was neat or cool. So overall, if you do a sentiment analysis on the different tweets, it turns out to be a neutral. The negative tweets wash out the positive ones, will outwash the negative ones. So it's just a sort of a different perspective on the human coyote encounters than if you just looked at the data from our source. And the reason why we're focusing on Twitter is that they have the easiest technologies. They have a special API that it makes it a lot easier to search. We also know that Nextdoor and other social media sites also have a lot of reports, but it's much more difficult for us to access that data at a statewide level, which is something that we're, social media is, from a social science perspective, it's a very powerful tool, but it's also a double-edged tool that it can also get a little bit. It's hard to get a handle on it, and sometimes those social media reports really go out of control and cause their own suite of problems.
Thank you, Alex. Any more questions for Dr. Alex? All right, thank you. Thank you so much. Really interesting work. Thanks for sharing that with us today, Alex.